The shop smelled of machine oil and old coffee. Sharp, bitter, familiar. I'd been working here for a few months, long enough to know which socket wrenches went missing, which pipes hissed when the pressure rose, and which customers pretended not to stare when their cars coughed smoke out the exhaust. And then there was her. She wasn't a customer, not exactly. She came in sometimes, never rushed, never flustered like most people. A woman in her 40s, sharp eyes, the kind of confidence that made you stand straighter without realizing you were doing it. She said her name once, casual, like it didn't matter whether I remembered. Of course I remembered. That day, she leaned against the counter while I tried fixing the card machine that kept eating receipts. The light above flickered, throwing her face into moments of shadow and sudden clarity. I caught myself watching too long, and when she noticed, I looked down at the machine, pretending it was the most important task in the world. "You're too young to be this serious," she said, breaking the silence. I chuckled, not looking up. "And you're too serious to be standing in a place like this." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she tapped her nails lightly on the counter, an irregular rhythm, soft but deliberate. When she finally spoke, her voice dropped lower. Maybe I just like watching people fix things. I should have had a reply. Something clever, or at least neutral. But my mind blanked, and the only sound was the hum of the broken card reader, the scrape of my screwdriver, and the quickening beat of my own pulse. She noticed that, too. Her gaze lingered longer than it should have, steady, calm, unbothered by the silence I had no idea how to fill. For a second, I thought she might smile. She didn't. Instead, she shifted her weight, straightened her jacket, and handed me a receipt that didn't even need signing. "Hold this," she said. I took it. My fingers brushed hers, and it was nothing, just a slip of paper, a simple handoff. But it felt like more, because she didn't pull back immediately. Not until I cleared my throat and dropped my eyes to the counter. When she finally left, the shop door clanged shut louder than usual. The air felt emptier. That night, I told myself not to text her. She'd said the same, "Don't text me tonight." The warning sat there in my chest like a stone. But by midnight, the silence had become unbearable. My phone glowed on the nightstand, and I kept staring at it, flipping it face down, then face up again. Finally, I typed 3 words before I could stop myself. "Then expect my call instead." I didn't send it right away. I hovered, thumb trembling, reading it over and over, like I was rehearsing a confession I hadn't meant to make. Her face, half in shadow under that flickering light, wouldn't leave my mind. The calm way she'd looked at me, unafraid of the silence between us. I sent the message. And now, lying awake, phone screen dimmed, I know I'll spend the rest of the night listening for the sound of it ringing. The next time I saw her, it wasn't in the shop. It was in the back lot, where the smell of gasoline mixed with damp asphalt after a quick morning rain. She was standing beside her car with the hood open, not looking at it the way most people did, frustrated, helpless, but with a kind of stillness, like she'd already accepted the problem long before she called anyone over. "Battery's dead," I said, crouching with the jumper cables. "You must have left the lights on." "I don't forget things like that," she answered, flat but not defensive. Her arms were crossed, jacket pulled tight, hair still damp at the ends from the rain. She looked more tired than she wanted anyone to notice. I hooked the clamps without saying anything else. There was a line I didn't want to cross. Not yet, maybe not ever, but silence didn't feel like safety. It felt like distance she wanted me to respect. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at the screen, then locked it without answering. I caught the flicker in her face, something unspoken, there and gone. Vulnerability, maybe, or something heavier. "You okay?" The words came out before I could stop them. She hesitated, just long enough that the question landed. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't match the eyes. "Fine, just tired." It wasn't convincing. I pressed the ignition on the shop's tow truck, letting the engine rumble to life. Sparks jumped when I clipped the last cable, and the sound made her flinch, barely, but I noticed. She laughed softly at herself a second later, shaking her head like it was nothing. That laugh, low, almost embarrassed, stuck with me more than it should have. It wasn't the kind of laugh she gave other people at the counter. This one felt unguarded, like it had slipped out before she could decide whether she wanted to share it. The car sputtered, then turned over. I shut everything down and stepped back. She slid into the driver's seat, adjusted the rearview mirror, then froze for a second with both hands on the wheel. She didn't start driving, just sat there, eyes closed, shoulders sinking as if the moment alone was heavier than the whole broken car. I should have walked away, but I didn't. "You sure you're all right?" I asked again, softer this time, leaning near the window. Her eyes opened slowly, fixing on me with a look that was both sharp and tired, guarded and something else. She almost said something. I could see the words forming, her lips parting, the hesitation thick between us. Then she shook her head, as if changing her mind. "Thanks for the help," she said instead, voice steady now. I nodded, stepped back, let her go. But as she pulled out of the lot, she lowered the window halfway, just long enough to glance back at me. No smile, no wave, just a look that lingered 1 second too long. It was the kind of night the streetlights couldn't quite hold back. Rain streaking sideways, wind pushing against the shop's glass doors. I should have gone home, but I'd stayed late finishing paperwork I wasn't even required to do. She came in just as I was shutting down the computer, umbrella dripping, jacket damp at the shoulders. "Your boss here?" she asked, brushing rain from her sleeve. "No, just me." She hesitated in the doorway, then stepped inside anyway. The storm closed the world behind her. I found a towel in the back and handed it over. She didn't thank me right away, just pressed it against her hair, eyes fixed on the floor like she was buying time. "Finally," she said, "I hate driving in this weather. Thought I'd wait it out here." I nodded. The shop felt smaller than usual, shadows stretched long across the concrete. I made coffee just to fill the silence. The machine sputtered, hissed, gave us both something to listen to. We sat across the counter, steam curling between us. She cradled the cup in both hands. That's when I noticed the fine tremor in her fingers, not from the cold, but something else she didn't want me to see. "You look tired," I said before I could stop myself. She gave me a thin smile. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." Her smile faltered, and for a second I thought she might tell me why. Instead, her phone lit up on the counter. A man's name flashed across the screen. She flipped it over instantly, face tightening. I tried to look away, but she noticed. Her jaw clenched, then softened, and she let out a breath that sounded heavier than she meant it to. "He doesn't matter," she said, too quickly. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't need to. The rain hammered harder outside, rattling the glass. We sat there in the dim light, the storm wrapping itself around the building. The space between us felt thinner than it should have. Her hand brushed the counter near mine as she reached for the sugar. Not touching, just close enough to feel the pull. I didn't move. Neither did she. For a moment, the air shifted, like something could happen, something we both might regret and still not stop. My throat went dry. Words pressed at the back of it, wanting out. I started, but the sound of her phone buzzing again cut me off. Louder this time, insistent. She pushed back her chair sharply, the scrape echoing against the walls. She didn't look at me as she stood. I should go. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Just the sight of her gathering herself, slipping the phone into her bag, avoiding my eyes. At the door, she paused, turned halfway. Rain blurred the street behind her, wind tugging at her hair. For one suspended second, she almost said something. I saw it. Words caught in her throat the same way mine had been. But then she left. The next time we crossed paths, there was no storm, no broken car, no excuse. Just the two of us, cornered by routine. She'd stopped by late, after most of the crew had gone home. The shop was hushed, only the ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of the soda machine filling the space. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, as if bracing herself for something she hadn't decided whether to say. I wiped my hands on a rag, waiting, pretending to be busy. Finally, she spoke. "This, whatever this is," she stopped, shook her head. "It can't keep happening." Her voice was steady, but it wasn't dismissive. It was careful, as if she were choosing words that wouldn't betray her. I swallowed hard. "Nothing's happening." "That's the problem," she said quietly. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, sharp, unblinking. "Nothing's happening, and it still feels like too much. The words sat heavy between us. I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't. I just leaned back against the workbench, pretending the rag in my hand needed folding. She sighed, the kind of sigh that carried weeks of weight. You're too young. I'm too whatever I am. Too what? She shook her head again, refusing to finish. Silence swallowed the space. I could feel the air stretch, the distance collapsing without either of us moving. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that the age difference didn't matter, that I didn't care what anyone else thought. But the words caught, stuck somewhere behind my ribs. Instead, I said, then why are you here? That made her look at me. Really look. Her mouth parted like she might answer, but nothing came out. Just the faintest tremor in her jaw, a hand brushing through her hair as if to buy time. We stood there, two people refusing to step closer, refusing to step away. The quiet pressed down until it felt unbearable. Finally, she whispered, because I don't know how not to be. The rag slipped from my hand. My throat tightened, but I didn't move toward her. She didn't move either. We just stood, staring across a stretch of floor that felt like a cliff neither of us dared to cross. I wanted to say her name, to ground us in something real. Instead, all I managed was, what are we doing? Her eyes softened, barely, but enough that it broke something in me. She breathed out, shaky, as if she'd been holding it too long. We're pretending this is nothing, she said. And it isn't. The clock ticked once, loud as a gavel. She looked away first, but not before I saw the crack in her composure, the thin line between control and collapse. When she finally left, the door didn't slam. It closed softly, as if even the sound of it was too much. I wasn't expecting to see her that Sunday. The shop was closed, but I'd stopped by to grab a tool set I'd forgotten. She was already there, sitting on the hood of her car in the back lot, a cigarette smoldering between her fingers. She didn't look at me right away, just exhaled smoke into the cool air, as if she'd been waiting for it to disappear before speaking. You remind me of someone, she said finally. I stopped a few steps away, unsure if I was supposed to answer. She took another drag, slow and measured, then tapped the ash off with her thumb. My brother. He was younger than me too. Reckless, brave in ways that just looked careless to other people. Her voice caught, barely, but enough that I heard it. He died when he was 23. I felt the words land somewhere deep, like a stone hitting water. I didn't know what to say. Anything would have sounded wrong. She gave a small laugh, sharp, bitter. And here I am, standing around garages again, talking to another 20-something like I didn't learn a damn thing the first time. The cigarette burned low in her hand. Her eyes fixed on it, as if it could explain what she couldn't. I'm not him, I said softly. I know. Her gaze lifted to mine, steady now, though her mouth trembled. But sometimes you move like him, or you say something he would have said, and for a second, I forget it's you. The silence that followed felt different from the others we'd shared. Not heavy, not sharp, just raw, like a wound uncovered. I wanted to tell her I wasn't going anywhere, that I wasn't reckless, that I was careful in ways she didn't even see. But all that came out was, I'm still here. She stubbed out the cigarette against the metal hood, eyes narrowing as if weighing the words. Then she nodded once, a tiny movement, but it felt like she was allowing herself to believe me, just a little. Neither of us moved closer, but something between us shifted anyway. Not trust, not yet, but a thread had been tied, quiet and invisible, pulling us into a space that wasn't so easy to escape anymore. She slid off the hood, brushing ash from her jacket. Don't read too much into this, she said, though her tone was softer than her words. I won't, I replied, but we both knew I already had. As she walked past me, her shoulder brushed mine, barely, accidentally, but enough to leave heat in its wake. It was late again, not storming this time, not dramatic, just quiet, the kind of quiet that made the tick of the clock sound louder than it should. She came in near closing, not with an excuse this time, but as if she'd finally given up pretending she needed one. Neither of us spoke right away. I wiped down the counter that didn't need wiping. She stood by the door longer than necessary, then finally walked over and sat down. The distance between us had never felt smaller. You shouldn't, she started, then stopped, shaking her head. I shouldn't keep coming here. But you do, I said softly. Her laugh was low, almost sad. Yeah, I do. The words hung there, as if they were enough. Maybe they were. For the first time, she didn't look guarded. She looked tired, tired in a way that wasn't about sleep. Her shoulders sagged, her hands resting loosely on the counter. I noticed how still they were this time. Not trembling, not fidgeting. Just open. I sat across from her, leaning in without meaning to. We can stop pretending. Her eyes lifted to mine. Long, searching. She didn't flinch, didn't hide. And if we stop pretending? I swallowed. Then it's real. Silence again, but it wasn't the sharp kind that hurt. It was softer now, fragile but warm, like both of us were afraid of breaking it. She reached for her cup, fingers brushing the rim, but then left it untouched. Her hand stayed on the counter, close to mine, not moving away, not daring to move closer either. Minutes passed like that, breathing the same air, hearing the same quiet. My chest ached with the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, she whispered, I can't go through another loss. Not again. Her voice cracked. Just slightly, but enough that I felt it. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't say promises I couldn't keep. Instead, I let my hand slide the smallest distance forward, until my fingers barely grazed hers. A touch so light it could have been an accident. But it wasn't. She didn't pull away. Her eyes closed for a moment, a breath catching in her throat, and when she opened them again, she looked at me as if I'd stopped being a reminder of someone she'd lost and had become someone standing right there in front of her. No declarations, no speeches, just two people choosing not to run anymore. We sat like that, fingers brushing, silence speaking louder than words. The night stretched on, and neither of us moved to end it. I think about that night more often than I'll ever admit. Not because something happened, but because something finally stopped happening. The pretending, the circling, the excuses. We didn't fall into each other like people in stories do. We just let go of the fight against it. Looking back, I realize it wasn't one moment that changed everything. It was dozens of smaller ones. The silence we didn't break, the glances that lasted too long, the way she laughed when she didn't mean to, the nights she showed up without explaining why. Each one was a thread. And eventually, the threads became a rope, tying us together whether we wanted it or not. She never gave me a speech about her fears, not the whole truth. And I never confessed how much space she took up in my head. But somewhere in the middle of our hesitations, we found something that felt more honest than words. What changed? Maybe me, first. I learned patience, the kind that isn't about waiting, but about listening. I stopped trying to fill silences with explanations. I started hearing what lived underneath them. And her? She let herself be seen. Not in the way most people see her, confident, composed, untouchable, but in the way she tried so hard to hide. The cracks, the tiredness, the moments where she wasn't sure if she deserved to let someone close again. Love, if that's what this is, doesn't always start with a kiss, or a confession, or fireworks. Sometimes it starts with two hands on a counter, not quite touching, finally deciding not to pull away. We never defined it. We still haven't. But when she sits across from me now, coffee growing cold between us, it doesn't feel forbidden anymore. It feels earned. I can't tell you where it goes from here. Maybe we'll stay in this fragile balance. Maybe we'll stumble. Maybe we'll break. But I know this. She taught me that love isn't about the rush. It's about the pauses. The moments when you're both too afraid to move, and yet neither of you leaves. And if I could go back to that first night, when I told her not to expect my text, but to expect my call instead, I'd still do it. Even knowing how complicated it would become. Even knowing how much it would change me. Because some people you don't chase. You just stay long enough, quietly enough, until they realize you're still there.